Therapists have a boundary problem that degrades the very premise of mental health therapy. We are your whistleblowing shrinks, Dr. Teralyn and therapist Jenn, and this is the Gaslit Truth Podcast. And before we get started and we set this whole conversation on fire, one, we want to remind you guys to please like, subscribe, ring the bell, get the alerts, okay? Give us some love. We want love that's constructive love that's fair love that's not being an asshole when you give us feedback online. So I'd like to introduce to everybody our new super fan to the Gaslit Truth Podcast.
And I think many of our listeners might already know this person because he's all over Facebook. Dr. Peter Rausch, a psychologist, he's been pushing our algorithm with his insightful comments for about a week or more. Dude's on my Facebook about 20 times or more a day. And he found the Gaslit Truth podcast on Facebook. And this was one of his insightful comments. Ready? Fuck the term gaslighting. Such a lame ass term. Sounds like some cheese dick victim. Call it getting blown off, fucked, screwed over, etc. So if you're over on our Facebook page, over on the Gaslit Truth podcast or our personal pages, please do us a favor and literally show him some good love, because
give him some good Gaslit Truth fan love.
Yeah, he's needs to take a break anyway. If this show has ever put words to something you felt but couldn't explain, supporting it does matter.
Yeah, so true. All right. And also, guys, just remember that Dr. Teralyn and I are deprescribers. What does that mean? It means that we have a very specific set of knowledge on psychiatric medication and the role that it has on the brain and the body. And so what we can do is help you get off of psychiatric medication safely. So if you are interested in doing that, please make sure that you shoot us an email at thegaslittruthpodcast@gmail.com.
Please welcome to the show, Aron Gilbert. Aron is a social work psychotherapist and the founder of Boston Evening Therapy Associates, located in Brookline and across the state of Massachusetts. I had to say that very slow. I did it. I think I did it pretty well. Welcome to the show, Aron. We're going to talk about those boundary issues of therapists, and we're glad to have you here.
Thank you. Very nice to be with you both.
Aron's like, what the hell did I sign up for with these two? If y'all can see the first 10, 15 minutes before we get recording. Oh, boy. All right. So, Aron, you're here.
It was a very, very interesting assessment by Dr. Rausch there. It was.
Yeah, I know. That's why he's our super fan, and we're all going to show him lots of love. And believe it or not, this is just another day in the life of two whistleblowers and the shit that we deal with, and that comes our way all the time because we talk about controversial things that other people don't want to talk about. And it's interesting because the feedback that's negative so much that we get is from our own peers. So that being said, let's talk about these limitations of our own peers, and how therapists have some serious boundary problems, and how detrimental not only is that to the client, but also to the therapy practice itself and to the therapists themselves. So when we first started, Aron, you were talking a little bit about some of these boundary issues that therapists can have. So let's start there. I know it's a little general, but we'll get a little bit deeper dive into this. So what do you see as being problematic as a psychotherapist and someone who's working in the field? Where are these issues with boundaries that therapists can't seem to get over a little bit here?
Yeah, well, I think that as we were talking before, I think that therapists, maybe it's part of our training or part of our, cultural kind of evolution in recent decades or something. But one of the areas that is a problem is that we're not taking the therapy process as seriously as maybe we should, or as we should. I shouldn't say qualify it as maybe. And we were, the three of us, talking about it before, that this shows up in various ways. People miss appointments, and we don't, we give them a pass, or we don't charge them for it, or we try to be very understanding, well, something came up, or this important thing came up, or I just forgot, or, and, um, sort of things like that, diminish the importance of the process. I mean, we're doing the ideas that we're here to do really important work. I mean, like, in many ways, like the most important work. Like, a person is coming and saying, my life, my whole experience of being a human being is not good, or is not as good as it should be, or is terrible, or is awful, or I've thought about suicide, or I, wouldn't mind being dead, or,
Yep.
things are awful. And what's more important than that? And if we don't take that attitude all the time in the process, then we're sending a mixed message. We're sending a message that says, yeah, it's important. It's important to show up, and we're going to try to help you make your life better, or make your life less horrible. But yeah, I know things come up and you forgot, and we don't want to hurt your feelings and things. And oh yeah, no, other things are really important too, and that's fine. So I think that's a very mixed message, and a potentially really destructive message. I mean, that's just one example. I don't know if you guys.
No, no, I think you said that very well, because the work that we do is the most important work. I
Yeah.
believe as the same as you. I think some of I think the messaging around that very topic, we'll just kind of hang out here with the canceling of appointments and things like that for a second, guys. I think the framing around that is what's the most important, because it gets framed for therapists as, well, if I say anything, or if I penalize them, with a
Mhm.
fee, that maybe they won't be my client anymore, and I'm going to lose that client, right? Which means then I lose money, and I lose, future money and all of that. So I'm going to acquiesce and just be the person that says, "Oh, it's okay." So they come back, right? And I think, and then as the client side, because it also hasn't been framed in such a way that you just did, which, by the way, was the most eloquent way that I've ever heard it being framed.
It was really good.
Yes, it was very good. On the client side, it's, well, it's a money grab. You are, just trying to take money from me, all of that. So those are the things we hear in practice. Yes, I think he's got stuff to say. He's
Well,
like, mm-hmm.
it just reminds me of other things that we were talking about before the show started, which was, this sort of artificial, delineation between sort of the business of therapy and the practice of therapy, and how we're sort of either trained or not trained at all to kind of, those two concepts are kind of antithetical to
Yes.
each other,
Yes.
that it's like, and I think I was saying before, I just, in my training, if, if the idea was talking about sort of the business of therapy, it would sort of feel like, well, hey, if you wanted to, if you want to be in business, you should be in business school, not in therapy school,
Mhm.
And yes, I think that you're right. I think that, well, the concept of money is such a problem with therapists generally. It's like we want
Oh boy, Aron, Terry and I
to,
were just talking about that before you came on the show, and how overworked and underpaid and all the things that are happening within the therapy realm. And if some of us would just stop taking $40 payments for an hour of seeing a client, because of the detriment that actually does, right, over time within big business and insurance carriers and all these things. Okay. But you said something when you're talking about the delineation between like the business end of things and the therapy end of things.
Yeah.
I have been told many, many times that I am crossing ethical lines. There is a conflict of interest that exists by putting myself in a position with the business end of therapy and then the therapeutic end of therapy, because of how these, like, we're taught that these two worlds like don't collide and that they need to be siloed. Like, you need to
Right.
stay out of this. This is a conflict of interest when it comes to money, Jenn. Like, you can't sit and charge this, or someone's not going to show up and you're going to charge them a full session fee for not being there. Like, you have actually just created a conflict of interest between you and your client because now you have touched on the world of money with them. And I think this is such a misnomer, because we're siloing two things that is, we have to, for you to be a successful therapist for yourself and for the client, you've got to have boundaries around this. You
Yeah.
have to. Like, what impact does it have on a client when, as a therapist, you continue to give them a hall pass over and over and over? What are you teaching them about the importance of what they're doing? What are you teaching them about boundaries? What kind of practice are you running?
Right. I mean, it's also becomes, it's just such a mix of what is clinical and what is business, because, if you're too uncomfortable to kind of address the reality of money, I mean, money's got to be right up there in sort of psychological and emotional power as anything else there is, I mean,
I feel like Maslow should have put
yeah.
Money.
There's like the second one, hierarchy of needs is going to be self-actualization and fucking money.
Yeah,
like, you're right. You're right.
It touches on security, it touches on influence, it touches on power, it touches on visibility, it touches on all kinds of things, right? I mean, it's huge.
Mhm.
And to sort of say, well, we're not going to know, yeah. And it's sort of a convenient, I guess, for those of us that take insurance, it's sort of, I guess, a convenient kind of, there's all kinds of problems with that, but there's also, it kind of deflects it a little bit. It's like, oh, you don't owe the insurance company. Well, that's
Yeah, you
that
can take a
doesn't have anything
hands
with
off.
you.
Yeah, I could take a hands-off approach. Yeah.
And yeah, well, and then you can just focus on like a copay, which is like easier to talk about because it's small. Anyway, but it does it so there's right, and you can't run a practice without running it like a business. I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, you guys know it's very it's it's a do you guys deal with insurance, or do you do
We do.
We do both.
We
So
do both. We do both.
it's
Yeah.
sort of it's a it's a real challenge,
Mhm.
and you so just from the running the business standpoint, that's important. So it's important to us as individuals, but clinically, it's also important to the client, because it says, this, let's get this right. Let's get this straight. We're doing important work here. It doesn't mean that every single session is going to be this magical breakthrough, or some sessions aren't going to feel unproductive or something like that. That happens, but we've set aside time to do something extremely important, and I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the study. I can't remember exactly when it was, but just in terms of therapy and money, it's like there was some measurement of people that sought out therapy versus not, and it showed that it had a real impact in terms of productivity. People that got therapy were more productive economically and, were more effective for themselves and for the society of being more economically contributory. And so, these things they intersect with each other, and we shouldn't pretend that they don't.
Or that somebody is wrong or bad, i.e. the therapist, for wanting to be paid. Because I also go ahead. I was going to say in the very beginning, it's like it is a contract, but it is the very first step of the contract saying to the client, like, listen, you have responsibility to yourself in this as well, in this relationship, right? So you have a responsibility for payment, and nobody likes to hear it like that, right? But that is your first actual I'm taking steps. I'm being responsible for this through the payment. And like you said, for some, the payment is zero, right? Which I don't always agree with. I think there's a lack of investment often when payments are zero or very low. Because as you probably know this too, Aron, once you come around January 1st and all the deductibles reset again, you'll see a reduction in people showing up because they suddenly have to pay full price, quote unquote, until their deductible is met. So then suddenly mental health is not important. This is the weird conversation. Like, mental health is the most important thing. This is what you hear in media all the time. Like, so important, so important, so important. Except when it comes time to pay it, then it's negotiable and not really that important. And if my deductible isn't met, then I'm not going to do it. So the importance is only there when I pay little or nothing. That's the only time that the importance is there.
We bridge this into something.
Generalizing.
Okay.
This is not all people. This is not all clients. I'm generalizing.
We bridge this into something that I think is fascinating that is on your website, Aron. You have a whole section on your website about why paying privately for psychotherapy could be advantageous. To me, there's a whole level of informed consent. There are risks, there are benefits, there are alternatives, right, to paying privately or paying with your insurance for psychotherapy. And this branches into this conversation. You got a whole chunk of this, right, on your Boston Evening Therapy website.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why you put this on there and why you actually have, like, there's limits to privacy and why private pay might be better, and there's limits to sessions when you are running through insurance, and there are limits to the depth of therapy that you may be able to receive? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, look, people have insurance, they pay for insurance, and they want to use insurance, and that's understandable. It's just that people should always be aware of what that means. Nothing is free. And in some ways, when you're using insurance, I mean, it's a funny way to say this, but in some ways, the insurance company is sort of like the client, because they're paying and they have their requirements and rules. I mean, of course, one of them is you have to have a diagnosis. You have to be given not just a diagnosis, but a diagnosis that they recognize as being worthy of therapy.
Oh yes, this happened with Jenn. Like, she'll put accurate diagnoses on there, and it'll get kicked back as not being billable, even though it is the most accurate thing. Yes.
Yep. I cannot give someone an alcohol use disorder and it will be billed and it will come through on billing. Even if there's another mental health code, nope, they will say absolutely not. And I will have to remove diagnoses. So this is a really good point as well for people to hear, Aron, that there is a downside to this. You said it. Not only are we going to give you a label, but a label that the insurance company deems worthy.
Exactly. So I think, for example, you also can't. There's a whole range of diagnoses in the DSM-5 that is, like adjustment disorder with anxiety, adjustment disorder with depressive symptoms. Nope, the adjustment disorder, that's not,
It's
it
not enough.
needs to, not enough. It
Nope.
needs to be like real true blue depression, or real, you got to be a depressive disorder, got to be an legitimate anxiety disorder. Now, so people just need to understand that, like, now, yeah, should it matter? Well, probably no, it shouldn't matter. It's not like your medical records are going to be shared widely, but you never know. I mean, what do you it goes.
Well, there are a couple examples. I mean, there are that Jenn and I have experienced in this. One is with kids. And their diagnosis, Jenn does military assessments. And so kids with diagnoses when they're 5 suddenly becomes relevant to get into the military when they're 18. Yeah. And I've had to do them for life insurance. So either they get denied life insurance on a commercial policy, or they're trying to make their premium, triple because they had a depression diagnosis when they were in their early 20s or something. So yeah, so it comes out in the weirdest ways that you would never think would be possible, but actually are. Even when my son was applying to work in the federal government, they have a whole list of things. Have you ever had a diagnosis? If so, when? Well, who was the provider? All of this stuff, even though they say, we will not discriminate based on diagnosis. And I'm like, yes, you will. Don't even give me that. If you're asking for all of that, if you're not going to discriminate based on it, then don't ask. Then it becomes an irrelevant conversation. But when you're asking, and you're asking for specific things, then to me, that means that could impact your ability to get hired. So it does come out in weird ways that you would never expect, in my opinion.
The other, absolutely.
And court too. Court, by the way, court.
Oh,
yes.
yeah, that's another one.
Yep.
Right. Oh, court. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking about divorce court. I'm thinking about child custody stuff. Even if it's relevant or irrelevant, those notes and those diagnoses will somehow get their way into court, and
they follow you. They follow you. Yep.
Again, not expecting that to happen in your life, but it could, right? Who knows?
But this is where the conversation you're having, Aron, comes in. Like, let's talk to the client about what will happen when you run insurance.
Right. And also like, randomly, seemingly randomly, I don't know, maybe they have their reasons, I guess, but like seemingly randomly, the insurance company will want to see the notes.
Yep.
I've never quite understood. I think what that is, I think my cynical side, I think what that is they're just looking for notes that aren't appropriate or good enough or something, so that they can find a reason to claw back payment. I don't think it has as much to do with being invasive and wanting to know about that individual person, but
how they're doing.
I think trying to get their money back somehow.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
but whatever their motivation is, they do have the right, and people need to know this, they do have the right to say, hey, let me see Jenn's notes. What were you guys, what did she say exactly? It's like, so
there's an illusion of privacy, because that's just some person sitting at a desk reviewing to see if it's worthy enough, again, to be paid, or if it was worthy enough to pay you in the first place. And now we get all of our money back because I deem the note to not be worthy, which is really funny because they don't really ever tell you what they're looking for in the notes, to deem the worthiness. It's all very vague, right? Until later. And you're like, oh, you owe us $5,000 for that person. You're like, what?
Yes.
Excuse me?
The other thing that we were talking earlier, I was thinking when we don't want to talk about money with the client, because we don't want to be a bad guy. We don't want to seem to be like, oh, you don't really want to help. You just want the money. And
you're just here for the money. We've heard that a million times. Yeah.
and we don't want, the societal thing about like nothing's more important than mental health. And are you kidding me? You're going to withhold mental health because of money? Are you crazy? What kind of an evil person are you? So there's that. But think about it clinically too. What the opportunity that we're missing is of like, because think about the way the conversation could go. It's like, you didn't show up. I'm going to have to charge you the full rate for the missed session. And so and the person might be, let's say they get angry, there's a lot of clinical information there that would be worth talking about.
Yes.
I can see this makes you, I can see this makes you really angry. And, to be kind of called out or to be kind of held
accountable,
and responsible for something. I can't believe this is the first time you felt this way. Can you tell when other times have you felt this way? Who else has called you out like I'm doing now? And when has this happened before?
So
why is listening? And that's, there's something valuable there. You also have to take, I think a therapist has to be willing. You were saying before about, we're afraid we're going to lose the client. You gotta, okay. I mean, you got to be willing to take that. Of course, that's a risk.
Take the risk.
Say, screw this. I'm not showing up again. And you've lost your client. But I mean, you're going to sacrifice, you're going to compromise your values and for desperately holding on to every client that comes to see you? No.
Right. Because, at any moment a client could quit services. Like
for any reason. And you'll never.
Yeah.
This boundary, this clinician's not like establishing this boundary for themselves. Okay. Here's the part of it that I have a hard time wrapping my brain around. So clients are so extremely surprised and angry. I've had many clients that are very, very, very angry and have had a few that don't come back to see me when they have, not shown up to the session and didn't reach out and let me know. They broke what we have, like our 24-hour rule. You've got 24 hours to cancel prior to your session. Okay. All of these things are spelled out in the practice policies, okay, in the consent pieces that everybody has. Every practice has these, right? The clients sign these, whether you're signing virtual documents, whether you're signing them in person, right? These are all things that are actually established, okay, at the beginning of therapy. And part of me wonders how serious people take the process because they're not reviewing those. They're oftentimes not reading them. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, like how many times you get a disclosure on something in life and you're just like, sign.
Yeah.
Okay. I do it too. I just did it yesterday for something, right? Okay. But, I'm wondering.
I was just like, can you believe that? I mean, did somebody wrote that, those things that you scroll through? I mean, how a team of lawyers.
Cumbersome. Like, it's so cumbersome, right? And honestly, in therapy, right, everybody gets these. Like, this is part of the standard documents that you get. And I always sit back and I wonder, like, how serious the client is taking therapy when even from the beginning, they're not putting a ton of effort into looking at that. But then I'm always surprised, and maybe clinicians don't do this. And Aron, I don't know what your experience is with this, but do clinicians set that boundary in the beginning of therapy and re-talk about the high points? These are things that are important for you to know. You signed this. If you're gonna jump into therapy with me, just know that these are important things you need to know. Whether it's talking about insurance.
But wait, I just have one thing to say. If you go to a physician's office, they don't reiterate what you just signed.
No, they do not.
No, they don't. Do not. So I'm wondering why that would be important to reiterate that in the therapist office. Like it's assumed you come in, you sign up, you have an office visit, you have a procedure, whatever. You know you're going to be paying for something. You know. And you also know if your insurance chooses not to pay that you're going to be the responsible party for that payment. Like that is assumed. I don't know why that is not assumed in a therapy office. And I don't know why we would have to reiterate it one more time in the therapy office after you've already signed.
I think that therapists would really do themselves a favor, and you were asking Jenn about what we do now. We don't we do have a training and a policy. All of our therapists are independent professionals, so ultimately they get to deal with this the way they're going to deal with it. But the way I deal with it and the way I recommend that people deal with it is to spend 5 full minutes in the first session talking about it, and being very clear. There's nothing more direct human to human communication, I think, is much more valuable than the forms. Yeah, we have the forms too, and they sign the forms, and at 24 hours, sign, no problem. But if you look the person in the eyes and say, look, we're about to try to do something very important together. This time is very valuable. We have policy about payment if you don't show up, and here is the policy, here's the amount that is owed, and it's 24 hours before that you need to let me know, and if you don't, you're going to be charged. Now, I know that sometimes there are good reasons that you can't make it. However, that is what's going to happen. That's the policy. Now, and you're going to get charged. I think that, what ends up happening usually is that people, that just sounds too, it's
too harsh. No, it's too harsh. You can't do that. Yeah, it's too harsh.
Do that.
You're a therapist. We don't do that. You're talking about money. We don't do that.
And I hear things like, my policies, I give them a freebie, I hear the word, freebie, they get a freebie, and then I enforce it. But it's like, oh, they were sick, they were sick. No, I don't expect, you have to, it becomes, if you start giving excuses, it becomes a really slippery slope fast, Well, obviously, if you're sick, you can't come, obviously, if, you had a lawyer called and you had to go to the lawyer's office unexpectedly, of course you can't come then. It just becomes a slippery slope. And so I think it's easier to just say, this is the policy. And if that doesn't seem fair, sometimes things aren't fair, right? Sometimes life is not fair. That's why you're here, probably.
But that's just it. Like, how serious how serious are you taking this? Especially with like virtual therapy. There is very little excuse in the world to not pull your phone up wherever you are. And we have clients that do this. And they're 20 minutes still in the checkout line at the grocery store. And I'm doing like mindfulness work and talking through things with them, because we're not going to be talking about their divorce they're going through right now. But they make it work. And because they had a circumstance come up, I really have a hard time with the excuses, especially in the realm of virtual therapy. But how serious is this process for you then? If you can't be there and show up, and yes, we have outliers where you might be sick or there could be a death in the family. There's nothing personal. Here's our policy. But for those like recurrent offenders, like how serious is therapy to you? And did the clinician talk to you about and assess how serious you are about being in therapy in the first place?
Yeah, and I just think that there's that informed consent. Like, whatever the policy is, like if I were to, and you have, like we were saying before, you have to be willing to lose a person, or, if I say to the person face to face, like, look, if you don't show up, you will be charged. And that's because this is important, and that's the policy, and my time is important, your time is important, and what we're trying to do together is important. So you will be charged. And if they choose to say, well, what if, what if, my dog is really sick, or, something, or what if, yeah, no, you'll still be charged. They do have the right to say, I'm not going to do that. And they have the right to not come.
100.
But
Correct.
once they've said, okay, I don't
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
I don't 100%, I wouldn't do it that way if I was in charge, or if I was but it's clear, and let's do it. I'm on board. Then it's like, then you don't have anything to like worry about, really. It's like you can focus on other things, now, because it's clear, but but therapists are very reticent. It's, it's creepy. It's uncomfortable. Like, I just was firm, clear with that person. And I hope they be still,
Like, you're the
Well,
therapist.
so
like you're
the
teaching
alternative.
yeah,
Wait.
you
I
teach
got to
boundary
bring in one
setting.
thing. Because the pushback to this with therapists is, well, but that's not fair. If I'm sick, then, and I cancel them, right, in less than 24 hours, what's the policy then? Right.
Doesn't matter.
And
Doesn't matter.
I understand this, Jen.
You're
I
running a
understand that it
business.
doesn't matter.
Like,
I get it.
you're
But
the business owner.
that's the counter, not just to the therapist, but to the clients, right? Of the unfairness of it all, right?
Yeah.
Life's unfair. Aron, you said that earlier.
I know.
Right. No, that is right. Okay. But that's not okay. So that's not
Scoreboard.
fully
Are we keeping a scoreboard? Is this healthy? Should we keep a scoreboard? Like, no. Like, should you keep a scoreboard with your husband in your marriage? Would you give that kind of advice? Hell no. But we're keeping a scoreboard now?
The thing that's good about having 5 minutes of discussion about that is, or 10 minutes, is that, yeah, that can come up, and you can talk about that. No, I hear what you're saying. That isn't really fair. That's not, in a cosmic sense, that's not fair. But in the world that we live in, that's the way it is, so our job is to do the best we can in this world in which we live. Now, I have an obligation to you to sort of be my best self, and to take every minute of our time together seriously. And that is my responsibility, and that's what I'm going to do. But yeah, I mean, it's not like everything comes out equal.
Right.
That's the world. That's the world we live in.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the part where the boundary setting, I think, with what we talked about when we first started, right? Like, don't you, as a client, as a consumer, wouldn't you want a therapist who knows how to set clear boundaries and actually uphold them and yet adhere to them? Like, if you struggle with that in your life, wouldn't you want to go to an expert who has that shit dialed in?
No.
And no matter what is right. And you don't, right? Because you're like, no, because I'd rather meet with someone who's going to be wishy-washy, who's going to take their boundary line and they're going to extend it. Right. Well, then you are doing yourself a disservice then as the client. Like, you're with somebody who's just as wishy-washy and floof as you are. And that's not going to help you grow at all.
Which is probably one of the reasons why you showed up to therapy in the first place, because not having boundaries wasn't serving you well in your life. Mm-hmm.
Right. But wouldn't you want that? Like,
and I was like, yeah, no, you're right. And all of this kind of attachment stuff, it's just thinking about it, the inconsistency. This is so important, and what we're doing, and this is going to change. This has the potential to change your life, and we're close, and you're doing such a great thing, but you can't show up. No problem. Well, okay,
yes.
No. It's like, well, is it important or is it not important?
That feels so gross to me, Aron. Like that feels so gross. Like
Yeah.
that weird inconsistency. Again, everyone's saying it's the most important thing. It's the most important. I'm doing everything I can for my mental health, but if you don't show up,
Yeah.
Mm,
Right.
what would they say if you didn't show up to your chemo treatment?
Right. Right.
Well, and
Right. That's right.
I mean, I get
The
charged.
lawyer, I had to see the lawyer called and I couldn't. Okay, well, okay, but you missed your chemo treatment.
Right.
No, that's
Yeah.
Right. Like where
Gravity.
does it go in the level of importance?
Mhm.
We get charged for everything. I actually said this to a client the other day. They were talking with me about this and they were not on board with this idea. And I had said to them, I said, well, if I'm not your cup of tea, because I'm not everyone's cup of tea as a therapist. If you want somebody who's going to be super validating and who's going to be real quiet and soft and isn't going to help push you, I'm not your girl. I'm not your girl. You go on Psychology today, do some trolling, find somebody else. Like we are a dime a dozen. You can shop
maybe
for us.
maybe Dr. Rausch.
Oh my God. Well played, Aron. Well played.
Okay. All right. Here he is. Here he comes in with the damn wit. Okay. And I said to this client, I said, here's the deal. I get charged if I have to cancel my dog grooming appointment. I get charged $75. If I cancel my hair appointment more than 24 hours, I get charged 75% of what the cost would have been for the services I wanted. I said, there is a business end of this and there is a boundary end of this. And again, like we do. And do we go back
And there's
to
a
that
therapeutic piece to this at this
correct.
exact
Do we go back to that dog groomer and we're like, screw you. I can't believe you charged me. No, you don't. But for some reason, us therapists, we bend those rules. We bend them. We bend boundaries. And I don't like it. It's yucky. And I don't care for it. Right. And why do we do that? Like what kind of service? I don't know. What are we doing in the therapeutic room when we're willing to compromise those things for ourselves and our client?
I think partly it's because we take the phrase meet the client where they are too literally. And I think that for me, that phrase was like meet them where they are emotionally in the space that you're in. As therapists, now we take it to mean meet them on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and miss your kid's softball game because they're more important than you. It means, if they tell you they don't have the money to pay you, that's okay because that's where they're at, right? I think we've taken the meet the client where they are in too much of a literal fashion and not a therapeutic fashion anymore. But that's just my interpretation of that, because I feel like that term gets weaponized against therapists all the time. Like you're supposed to meet the client where they are. That doesn't mean literally. That doesn't mean like in the parking lot. Like that doesn't mean that I put myself in financial, emotional, or physical danger because I have to meet the client where they're at, literally.
Yeah, it's sort of like I just sort of thinking that as therapists in the therapy session, I think we could imagine the client talking about tough love and getting tough love and having it be something that was important to them, and we would be nodding and saying like, oh, no, tough love is that can make a lot of sense, but we're not doing any tough love here. We're just doing.
I'm not going to do it though, but not me though, right?
Yeah.
Tough love from me, It's like, and that's tough love is, can be very empowering. Like facing that responsibility and going through that feeling of like, she really annoyed me with what they said, but then I really didn't like it, but then I kind of thought about it over the next few weeks or months, and all of a sudden it makes sense. It's the work. It's not like eating a candy bar all the time, right? I mean, saying something that is super helpful and loving and compassionate in the moment is like, that's great, when it's warranted. But sometimes the real nutrition is saying something that's tough, saying something that is challenging, looking at things that are challenging. Money sounds like it's a really, a real hotspot for you. That's just my observation. It's understandable. Money is a powerful emotional concept. Could we talk about that? We'll get back to our thing with money in a second. We're not going to lose that, but it sounds like plays a big role in your life generally also.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about that? And there could be some real value there,
It's fascinating to me because in the coaching world, this whole money conversation seems irrelevant.
It's relevant.
It's irrelevant. And people will pay thousands of dollars for coaches. And they know what they're paying for. They here's the money. And nobody's crying over it, right? But then you hit the most important space in your mental health, which is different than a coaching relationship. And suddenly money is the biggest consequence you could ever have. It gets me a lot when I'll have people historically that I've worked with will be upset about their deductible, but then they'll tell me that they hired a nutrition coach for $3,000, and I'm like, okay. Right. So I don't, it's just interesting to me how the two spaces, I mean, they share some similarities, but when it comes down to the money conversations, people are like, yeah, I'll spend money on a coach, but not on a therapist. But my mental health is the most important thing though. Right.
Right. Yeah. It's just, this is tough work. It's not easy. And I don't know what happened to this slogan, you get what you pay for, right? I mean, we accept that in a lot of areas of life. This is there is something we want to approach this as a very valuable, kind of a sacred thing. It's intimate, it's important, it's deeply personal, it's completely focused on what the person most wants to achieve in their life.
Yep.
I mean, that's a unique experience, and has value. That has value every way that it's measured, including monetary value. So,
right.
That's just the world that we live in.
Well, and I'm going to argue a little bit here too, because if I was thinking in my mind, I'm hoping people aren't thinking that we're client blaming for bringing it up. What we're doing is actually pointing out the problems with therapists themselves. It's a therapist problem. To me, it's a therapist problem.
Yes.
Because everybody argues about pricing and things of everything. Like, no, but so we can kind of anticipate that as just kind of a lived human experience. I've argued about prices before. But I don't think this is as much of a, it is and it isn't when it comes down to it, as much as of a consumer client thing as it is the therapist boundary issues around it, to bring the value back to the therapeutic process.
I think, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Well, I was just thinking when you talked about what you get, what you pay for. Okay. Anyone who is a licensed professional counselor, licensed clinical social worker, a therapist, psychologist, psychotherapist, you are like, how do we not have enough worth financially? You have spent 6, 7, 8, 9 years of your life, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on an education, okay, as a therapist, how you need to hold value in that. You are an expert. And that space needs to hold
Because it's not about, because we view it as it being about 1 hour of time. That's it.
Correct.
Well, so for
It's
1
not
hour,
about the 8 years of my life
no.
that I lost and
It's
the
like an artist.
90,000 I'm in the hole and the taxes now that will be done forever differently for me because I can't file jointly with my spouse because we make too much money and the government won't give me any help. Not that this is my sob story. And the private loans that you had to take out because you couldn't pay for the master's degree that you're still paying on and you're 43 years old. Y'all want me to keep going? I will. But this is the reality, guys, and we got to hold that up. There's value in that.
There was an artist, he's a potter, and he makes the most beautiful throne mugs, okay? I have not purchased one because they're $500 a piece, okay? They're $500 a pop. And he talks all the time about how this isn't about a single mug, that the time it takes me to make a single mug. It's about all the hours that have been put into the art so that I can make this beautiful mug, right? So it's about all of that. And people are like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. And I'm like, the same thing applies in this work, because there's a lot of artistry that goes on here. I view it as an art and a science at the same time. More of an art, like a social art is what it is. And if we can just in ourselves know that it's not about $1 per hour, right? This isn't about an hour of time. This is about a lifetime of work that we've put into ourselves to be able to help the person sitting before us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I should just make mugs. I don't know.
Yeah. I just think about the mugs I've dropped on the floor.
I'd be so mad if I dropped a $500 mug. I'd be like, oh no.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. This is not a client thing so much as it is a us thing that we are. It's just not. It's not in the zeitgeist. It's not in our training. It's sort of socially not so acceptable to kind of take ourselves seriously that way. I think as you were talking just there about the investment that we've made, I was sort of hearing almost in my mind the pushback that would come from like, oh, so if somebody is seeing us that earns a lower hourly, because we were talking about the hour, learns a lower hourly wage in what their work. So what are you saying? You think you're better than this person? You think you're more important than this person because you should get a higher pay? It's gross. It's not. It's elitist. It's it's self-important and all of those kind of things. It's not any of that. It's just, this is just what. This is just truth. It's just the truth, and so I just think that when we deal with what is real and not what we wish were, that we can make more progress with people. People want to make progress in the real world. They don't want to make progress in some theoretical, hypothetical, idealized world. They come to us in the real world. They have these real problems. Something really unfair happened. I was blamed at work for something that I had nothing to do with. I was accused of doing this thing, or my wife or my husband doesn't understand that they're treating me like a child. It's like these things are unfair. I want to deal with things in the real world, and we have to, when you say meet them where they are, that's right. We do hear that, but meet them where they are in the world in which they live, which is the real world, right? It's not meet them where they are in this kind of fantasy of what should be, right? I mean, if I come there and I think I'm the most important person in the world, that's where you're going to meet me where I'm at, well, okay, but is that really true, in this world, So, yeah.
Good.
I appreciate you being here, Aron. And I think that's a good place to wrap up. What do you think, Jenn?
Yeah, I
All
think that is
right.
good.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you for listening to us. We are the Gaslit Truth Podcast. You can find us on all the socials at the Gaslit Truth Podcast. You can send us your Gaslit Truth stories at the Gaslit Truth Podcast at gmail.com. And we also want to thank Aron again. Thank you for coming on the show and talking with us.
Thank you.
Having you.
Yeah, appreciate it. And if anyone, I just want to quickly say, if anyone wants to reach me, you can send me an email anytime, Aron, Aaron at bostoneveningtherapy.com. And the website is bostoneveningtherapy.com.
Thanks, Aron.
Perfect. Thank you so much.